it really messes with your head
Sure.
and your spirituality and I mean, everything.
I
I was sorry, I didn't mean to
this
cut you off. I was
no.
approached by somebody and he says, "When are you guys going to do another recording? When are you guys going to? I'm anxious to hear another episode." And I said, that's my fault. The last one we did was the Idaho 4, and I did a lot of deep diving into that one, and it got really dark, and it gets, it kind of wears on you.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if you get on the conspiracy side or doesn't matter what side. That one in particular was brutal no matter how you looked at it.
Yeah.
So this one isn't at least it's not bloody and gory, but
It's,
it goes a lot of places. I kind of want to simplify it a little bit because I think with the Jeffrey Epstein thing, especially now everybody's gotten into the Epstein files.
right.
And I think a lot of people have maybe forgotten who Jeffrey Epstein is and maybe don't even know where the hell this guy come from.
Right. And that's a great idea because, I think that a lot of people we've all heard about Jeffrey Epstein, and we've all kind of heard what supposedly he's done and who he's affiliated with and this, that, and the other. But yeah, it'd be a good idea to really do a really good dive into where he actually stemmed from and where.
I do think it's going to be more than one episode.
Oh, absolutely.
Because what I'm hoping to get through today is I want to get up through the 2005 investigation. And, we recorded this once before, and that's when I screwed the mics up, and we couldn't even put it out there. So this is kind of a redo. And I'm glad it's a redo because I think I spent too much time on his early life. And so I'm going to go through it a little bit quicker this time. And we can discuss parts of it as we go.
Yeah, and funny that you say that because I actually then went back and did, I mean, you had done a lot of research on him and his childhood and where he went to school and that, and I didn't know any of that. So then I kind of went back and looked at stuff that I could find out about him, which I found some interesting things that may actually then link into some of the more current stuff.
Well, and I think that's, I've watched the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
I found an interesting site where I got a lot of information off of that has a lot of the case files and all that. So there was a few things actually that I come across that I thought, I didn't know that. Matter of fact, there's even one person I'm going to talk about later who's a pretty big player, a key player. And I was like, I've never even heard this name before.
Huh?
I'm sure some people have, but I sure as hell hadn't. But so anyways, we'll get into the early stuff real quick, and I'll try and kind of burn through it. So for people who don't know, that Jeffrey Epstein was born and raised in New York and part of Coney Island, Brooklyn area. And his folks were just middle class. So he didn't come from wealth. Matter of fact, I think he was maybe lower middle class. His dad worked for the Parks Department for New York. His mom worked for a school, and she was like an assistant or something
like
that
an
effect.
aide or something like that. Yeah.
She was an aide. And they grew up in just in an apartment complex called the Seagate Housing Complex. Now, Jeffrey was smart, though. So he was fairly intelligent.
I did learn that.
So he graduated at the age of 16, 2 years early, and went to a couple of colleges.
Well, and even before that, if you
Go ahead.
don't mind me interjecting, like when he was 5, they said he started playing the piano. And so he was really into the arts and music and talented in that way. And then he was really good at math. And at 14, he went to a summer camp called Interlochen for the Fine Arts, which is a camp for musicians and artists, maybe more towards the elite side. Some famous people that went there were like Josh Groban and some famous singers that had gone to this summer camp for musicians. Well, he went there at 14. And then from then, he, like you said, he graduated at the age of 16. He passed through a couple of years, graduated early at 16. So he was definitely smart. And I guess what I learned about him early on is he was, at a young age, a hustler. For extra money, he would take kids and tutor them in geometry and math lessons. And he kind of did that on his own and took kids aside and made some money that way.
And I think he continued to do that for a while because after he graduated, he first went to Cooper Union College. But I think he was only at Cooper Union for maybe a year or 2 years, and he left. And then he went to New York University. Once again, was only there for a year and a half, something like that. And then he leaves college. So he never earned a degree at either one of those colleges. And I also think that during his time in his colleges, he was still doing the same thing. He was still tutoring on math. And math and physics were actually what he went to college for.
Right. Yeah.
So he never went for like finance or anything.
Correct.
Which is ultimately where he ended up in his adult life. But after, what I thought was kind of weird, and maybe it's not, maybe for people that know more about some of the colleges in New York, but without any college degree, he landed a teaching job at an elite school. An elite, I think it's K through 12.
Yeah, it's like a prep school.
Yep. It's a Dalton school.
Yeah,
in New
it's
York,
for the
anybody
elite.
Wants to know, but
Like the elite society of New York, basically. So.
Yeah, it was comprised of the kids of like Wall Street executives, diplomats, wealthy families, actors, actresses, performers.
Yeah, they said like.
I saw.
Gosh, I can't remember. Yeah, Chevy Chase went there. I can't remember who else that went there. Went into Dalton. Yeah,
it was an elite school, and so he taught there for.
So well,
I've heard 2. I've heard 1 year and I've heard 2 years.
I think I read 2, but do you know how he got the job there, or who gave him the job? Because that's what I found interesting.
Yes. So he got the job. The school head at the time, his name was Donald Barr.
Interesting.
And for anybody that doesn't know who Donald Barr is, his son, do you know?
Marissa, can you pull up the book that Donald Barr published or wrote in the meantime while we're talking?
Sure. Because we're still going to be talking about Barr. So
yeah,
Donald Barr's son is William Barr. And William Barr, I believe, wasn't he a U.S. attorney with the AG's office?
Yeah, he was oh crap, I'm not going to say the right thing, but he was I
think he might have been
he was,
yeah. He's an attorney general.
Yeah, attorney general.
Who I think investigated some of the Epstein stuff.
Are you talking space relations?
Yes. Okay. So the reason I find this interesting is Donald Barr has an interesting past or correlation with maybe, and I'm going ahead of myself, but maybe some possible interest in relations with younger people, or how do I want to say that politically correct?
Would you like
Is
me
he a pedophile?
to read the...
Can you?
Okay.
Yeah.
Space Relations is a 1973 science fiction novel by Donald Barr, subtitled A Slightly Gothic Interplanetary Tale that explores themes of slavery, domination, and romance through the torrid relationship between a slave, John Craig, and his owner, Lady Morgan. On the planet Kosar, which is part of a larger human empire but maintains its slave-based economy.
Yeah, so...
What?
Okay, so Donald Barr... Okay, so here's where it ties in, is because Epstein, what I had read is he actually studied some weird things. Like he went to study some weird things in college.
Well, he's kind of a weird dude.
Yeah, and
Socially awkward, I
it
hear.
wasn't just it was almost like human relations in psychology and mathematics or something like that. It was some weird thing that he studied, some weird subset.
Well, we learned later he is really into science
And
and biology.
yeah, and it makes me wonder if Donald Barr was actually also affiliated with this particular program, because it has a lot to do with, I don't want to say extraterrestrial beings, but I don't even know how to describe it. But
it's funny because we all know that Epstein he's a pedophile, but he's a weird dude. And so it should be no shock that he's associated with other weird freaking people.
well, right, because ultimately then he was, he studied genetics, he studied all kinds of things, scientific related, but also DNA, anatomy related, and also probably mind control related. I mean, all of that kind of was within his realm. And you can kind of see that by the way he talks in some of his interviews. He talks about the soul and how people make decisions and
his interview that he does
his yeah.
Is weird, and it's worth watching. Anybody that gets a chance to spend, I think it's 2 hours long, and it's not even like the entire thing. Apparently, there was several hours for interview. But before I get too far ahead of myself here,
Yeah, so it was just interesting to me because somehow he got affiliated and met Donald Barr. Donald Barr was the headmaster of Dalton School at the time, and then he hired Epstein with no degree, no background, to teach at this school. Just weird. And then you have Donald Barr that's writing this weird book about alien slavery in it. A lot of it, I think, had sexual innuendos in that book.
well, and I guess maybe he did teach for 2 years because Donald Barr hired him, but Donald Barr was let go.
Right.
Not terribly long after that.
I think it said
And
from
Peter-
74 to 76 is when Epstein was there. And then Epstein was ultimately let go. Well,
Yeah, Peter Branch let him go because Peter Branch took over the college after William Barr.
because he was supposedly having
Or Donald Barr, excuse me.
inappropriate relations with students,
There were,
or rumored, or suspicious.
I know they were creeped out by him. And I think one of the reasons they let him go is they discovered that he may have fabricated some of his academic credentials. Weird.
Weird.
Weird. Of course, it's easy for us to say that now. Back then, probably didn't happen. I wouldn't think it happened all the time. Maybe it did. But so ultimately, he's going to be kicked out of Dalton. But because Dalton is completely full of kids of elite people, he still makes connections. And he makes connections with some parents who have a connection with Bear Stearns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because ultimately, this is still a charismatic guy. And going back to what I said earlier, as a kid, he was a hustler. And I think he still continues to be a hustler. And he's charismatic and he's manipulative and he knows how to talk to people and he knows how to get farther along for his own benefit. And I'm sure there's some guys, some dads that were pretty impressed by this kid who's ultimately, he was 21 when he taught at this school. He's a 21-year-old kid teaching.
Yeah, physics and math at an elite prep school.
I mean, and granted, he's smart. So yeah, he gets introduced to. What was his name?
Oh, geez.
Rothen? No, something. What was his name at Bears and Stern?
I had my notes too, and I blew it.
Starts with an R.
Yeah, I've got it right here. Thanks, Marissa. Not your fault. I was just kidding. Well, we don't have anybody in the audience. Alan Greenberg.
Yeah. Well, I got it.
Alan Greenberg is
Yeah.
who
Could be.
recruited him.
Yeah. Okay.
I had that written on my old notes.
Keep
Yeah.
those handy.
Oh, I will. I'm not going to need him because I'm going to skip through some of it.
Anyway,
because
it's just interesting as how he kind of talked his way into the positions that he was in. And
sure. And he talked his way through Bear Stearns to a pretty high level in a short period of time. So he went to Bear Stearns. I think he was like in his mid-20s when he became a limited partner at a huge company.
yeah.
With tons of connections, making a shit ton of money.
But that just wasn't good enough for him because
It wasn't good enough.
Then he had to do what?
Well, so he left Bear Stearns. I don't know that he left because he wanted to. I think that they may have helped push him out. They had already knew that he kind of bullshit his academic credentials and holding 2 degrees, actually, I think is what he had told some of the people at Bear Stearns, which they found out was bullshit. So he's kind of being pushed out of Bear Stearns, and so he starts an independent firm. And he founded the J. Epstein and Company, and that was in 1982. And so his model was odd. He would only take clients that had $1 billion or more in assets. Now, I would guess, because he's kind of a charismatic guy, and he is a good talker.
Oh, and he's marketing. He's a marketing genius because he's marketing himself this way that he's so brilliant that he's only going to take billionaires.
Sure. And so what's going to happen? Billionaires are going to get curious and be like, I might want to check this guy out.
Yep.
And he ends up getting a huge client with Leslie Wexner.
Oh, Les Wexner.
Yes. And what company did he run?
It's L
Brands?
L Brands, because
Yes.
it was like the limited Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works. He owned all those.
Was it Bath and Body Works too?
They're like sister companies of Victoria's Secrets.
And while he was, partnered up with this Leslie Wexner, who is a billionaire, he cons, I don't know, I'm assuming he conned Leslie Wexner into signing Epstein to be his, what do they call that?
Power of attorney.
Power of attorney. And so now he had control of Leslie Wexner's finances.
Yeah, it's
And I
interesting.
kind of wonder how that happened.
Yeah, I think there's probably some blackmail footage in how that happened. Don't you think? I mean,
I think
there's
there could be
rumors out there.
something. Sure.
There's rumors out there that the two of them had relations, and that's what he was using for blackmail. But I mean, it could have been anything.
I mean, I can understand, he's a billionaire. He's going to be paying Jeffrey Epstein probably a premium, obviously. But to get power of attorney, and of course, that's when he obtained his apartment in New York. His apartment in New York, which I think is the largest private residence in New York, did belong to Leslie Wexner. Now it belongs to Jeffrey Epstein. So this is where he really began building his wealth. So this is where he then bought, his place in Florida. He's got his place where he bought the islands, Little St. James, and I don't know if it's a Big St. James. I don't know what the hell the other one's called. But
Well, the place he bought first was Zora Ranch.
was that the first one that he...
I think so. He bought that in like the early 90s.
But so he starts amassing all of these properties, planes, and shit like that.
Yeah, I'm specifically interested in the Zora Ranch because he said he bought that because there was some laboratory nearby that they had closed down, and that's when he was studying the eugenics and all of that, and he wanted to continue the studying of it. So he bought that ranch in order to basically have his own laboratory. Like he wanted to be in good with the scientists and still continue that type of work and research. And that's where he was going to do it, which is interesting, again, because you've got a financier that's now all of a sudden involved in eugenics and biology and DNA and all this stuff. Anyway.
So now he's extremely, extremely wealthy. And then we start to get into the 90s. And in the 90s is where his name started to become public due to allegations. And actually, the allegations, I believe, began in the 90s. Mm-hmm. So there have been supposedly some complaints and things starting to surface in the Palm Beach area. And then the formal investigation began. And this is kind of what I really wanted to get into, was in 2005.
Okay.
So to back up, there actually was something that happened in the 90s. I think it was with a student with an art school. I don't know much about that one, though, but...
It's Maria Farmer.
That's it. Mm-hmm. But 2005, that investigation is the one that really made his name popular in a lot of houses. So he started making the news. And that started with the parents of a 14-year-old girl who had received information, I believe it was from maybe a friend or a friend's parents, that they had overheard a couple of kids talking about how their daughter may have had some sort of a sexual relationship or something like that, with a wealthy individual who turned out to be Jeffrey Epstein. So law enforcement starts their investigation. They interview her, and what she says is that there's a girl that a friend of hers that recruits her, and that's a Haley Robinson, or Robson, not Robertson. Haley Robson.
Okay.
So this Haley Robson apparently approaches her and asks her if she wants to make a little money. Now, the girl, the 14-year-old, they're from a poor family. They don't have a lot of money. I think they live in a trailer, so they don't have much. And so you start offering a 14-year-old kid money, something they probably don't have. Mm-hmm. It becomes pretty attractive to them.
Right.
And so she tells her that she can get her like $200 or $300, something like that. And all she has to do is give a massage to this old guy. And so Haley tells her, up front, hey, you have to massage him. He may ask you to take your clothes off, but you can tell him no. And he might want to touch. Then again, you can tell him no if you want to. So anyways, she takes her over to Jeffrey Epstein's house. And I read the actual police reports. Uh-huh. And it's freaking long. And there is a ton of kids.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot.
I mean, oh, yeah.
But the stories are exactly the same. And so the story is the girls get there and they meet with an individual in the kitchen, a female. And the female then takes them upstairs. And as they're walking up the stairs, they notice, this artwork and photographs and naked people, and takes them into a bedroom. Then this female sets up the massage table, sets out the oils, and tells them that Jeffrey's going to be in a moment. So the female leaves. Jeffrey Epstein comes in, typically wearing a towel, goes over, lays on the table, picks out the oil that he wants the girl to massage him with, asks her to take their clothes off. They start massaging his back and his legs and his butt. He tries to talk them into taking their pants and their top off, sometimes their bra. And then he tries to touch him and rub on him. Ultimately, he rolls over, masturbates, does this sick thing. And then once he finishes, basically, that's when the massage stops. He gets up, he leaves. The girls go back downstairs. They get paid, and they leave. And can you bring up, I think it's A on the slides. You recognize anybody in the picture?
Well, Ghislaine Maxwell, for sure. The other one, I'm not sure who that one is.
You ever heard the name Sarah Kellen?
I don't know if I have or not.
Okay. So the woman who arranges, sets up the massage table, gets the oils out, lets the girls know that Jeffrey Epstein's going to be in a moment. When they're finished, takes them back downstairs, gives them the money, and they leave. The girl who makes the phone calls to Haley Robson and says, hey, can you set up an appointment? That's Sarah Kellen.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So when I read that, I was fully expecting it to be Maxwell.
Yeah, I think there was a whole enterprise with several people involved.
Well, there was. So Maxwell at the time was considered to be like the
procurer.
Well, the head of the house.
Oh, okay.
So she was kind of the number 2 under Epstein. And the Sarah Kellen was somewhere underneath that, but Sarah was the one that was making the arrangements, at least at this period of time, during the 2005 investigation, for all of these girls to come over. Mm-hmm. The reason you really don't know much about her is because at the end of the 2005 investigation, when this went to a grand jury and they ended up doing a plea deal, they signed an agreement that none of the co-conspirators, and there was 4 listed, none of those could be charged.
Great.
So he was the only one that ultimately ended up being charged. I think he was convicted of 1 or 2 counts, minor counts like soliciting prostitution, and another account that was similar to that. He received 18 months, served 13. Of course, he was on house arrest, or not house arrest. He got to leave to go to work release. And so he would leave in the morning. He wouldn't return till night. According to Jeffrey Epstein, he was in jail for a long time before that started. It's like, you've only been in jail for 13 fucking months. So I don't know what's a long time. 2 months, maybe 3 months. It's not a long time. And then he gets to leave and go do what it basically just spends the night at the jail.
Yeah.
But so when I was reading the report and I kept seeing this Sarah Kellen, I was like, where in this report am I going to get to Maxwell? I don't know that I really ever saw her name.
Makes you wonder, because did you feel like he manipulated Maxwell because of her ties with her, well, obviously her dad and everyone else that she had ties with? I mean, that's where I feel like the whole rumored that he was Mossad and yada yada came from, with all those connections with her father overseas. And
well, I believe he met her in, I think it might have been, I don't know if it was the late 80s, early 90s. And he actually had a relationship with her. They were like boyfriend, girlfriend, whatnot. But when they split up, she remained his partner. Now, here's another
weird relationship.
Here's another weird detail. Apparently, Maxwell was unpaid. That's weird. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know that either. But when I was reading these reports, it started off with the 14-year-old girl. And that was bad enough that he would try and grope her.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
And that he would masturbate in front of her, which I thought was gross enough. And so I start reading. There's all of these victims. All of the stories are almost. I couldn't believe when you're reading them. I would have to scroll up. It's like, did I lose my back on the first one again? Because the details were so similar with always going through the same door in the house, always meeting in the kitchen, always having the one blonde female that would take the girl, escort her up the steps to the bedroom.
Yeah.
The same female they would always describe the same thing. She would set up the massage table, and then she would get the oils out. And then she would tell the girl, it'll be a moment and Jeff will be in. She would exit the room. Jeff would walk in his towel. Same story every time. He would drop his towel to the floor. He would lie on the table. They would massage his back. At one point, he would ask them, of course, to take their clothes off. Some of them would. They would get down under their underwear. They would crawl on his back, basically straddle him, and continue the massage. And then when he would roll over, that's when, of course, he would take care of himself. But there was one girl in particular, and it was kind of the last part of the report that really got pretty gross. And this is, when I'm reading this, is the part that I can't believe that he didn't get more time. So all I really ever heard about to this point, before I read the report, was that he was getting massages and maybe groping girls and, masturbating in front of them. And I thought that he probably should have got more time just based on that. What I didn't know, that there was one girl in particular, a 16-year-old. Now, this one he had visit, according to her, hundreds of times.
I think I know who you're talking about, because I actually found her video.
And what they had her doing was gross. So Epstein also had I don't even know what you would title this person. She was from another country, and according to Jeffrey Epstein, he bought her. And this was his sex slave. And I believe it was an adult female, and I can't remember for the life of me what country she come from.
I think Brazil.
Could have been.
Yeah, because I found this interview. I was looking on YouTube, and I happened to stumble upon it. But there's some interviews of some of Jeffrey Epstein's victims. But the interviewer has a website called the softwhiteunderbelly.com. And there he has many of Epstein's victims basically telling their story. And one of them, I think her name was Melia or something like that. I don't know. But she was from Brazil, and she talked about how, she kind of needed the money. And basically the same story. I mean, she met him when she was 14. Maybe went to him when he was 16. I can't remember the full details. You'll have to watch the video on it. But she basically continued with him until she was 18. But he did this thing where he would kind of really groom one or two girls and then really convince them to, or manipulate them to bring him the other girls.
Yeah.
So it was a constant revolving door. This girl explains that she thought it was just pretty much her and her friend that were the main two that were visiting him. In actuality, there was hundreds of girls, but he just had this system down so precise, basically, that they didn't cross paths with any of the other girls, and they didn't even know about each other.
Well, he would have them scheduled, and actually he would have Sarah Kellen doing the scheduling.
Yeah, so it's just like she's telling the story. Like I would meet him 2-3 times a week. I was a regular, and then when she's telling her story, she's at the Virginia Giuffre trial, and she's like, "Oh, I feel so bad for all those victim statements. The victims are saying how they were raped by him, and he never raped me." And the friend that was with her, that would go with her all the time, she's like, "What are you talking about? Like, are you okay? Because he used you as an example. He would line us all up in the room. There would be 4 or 5 of us, and he would use you as an example and do all of these things to you and say, this is what a good girl does. This is how a good girl makes me happy, and do these horrific things to her. And she was oblivious to any of that happening to her. Like, she had blocked it out. In her memory, she would do as you described, go up, give him the massage, and he would use instruments, toys on her and get himself off and then be done. And that's what was in her memory. She had no recollection of the horrific things that he would do to her and the rest of them until after talking to this girl, and then she had triggered her memory, and she's like, oh my God. And in her testimony at the grand jury, she never even brought any of that up. And she claims that Maxwell she had an encounter with Maxwell, and Maxwell raped her also. And she never brought any of that up in her trial, in her testimony, I should say.
I don't think that they allowed a lot of the victims. I think there was only a handful of the victims that were allowed to testify at the grand jury.
She did, but she said, I didn't bring it up because I didn't remember it.
But getting back to the one that the last girl that was interviewed in this report, so she started off kind of the same way. She would go over there and maybe give a massage. He would try and touch her. He might touch her leg or touch her butt or something like that. And then the next time he would try and do a little bit more. And the next time a little bit more. And this continued on and on and on. Well, it got to the point where she'd gone over there one day. They go into the bedroom, I think, and they get onto the bed. And he asked her to perform oral sex on the girl from Brazil or wherever she's from. Mm-hmm. And at first she said, no, I don't want to do that. And then he offered her, just would keep offering more money until eventually she did. So it would get to where she would go over there and he would watch while she would have sex and perform sex acts with this other female in front of Jeffrey Epstein. And then it got to where they would all three be in the bed, and there would be, the touching and the fondling and things like that. And apparently she'd made it clear to Jeffrey that to this point it was okay, but she wasn't going to actually have sex with Jeff.
Her name is Marina Lacerda, and she's a Brazilian. She was Brazilian.
Okay, that
Brazil.
was the okay. So
That's the interview I watched.
the last time, I think it was the last time that she went over there, same sort of a deal. They go upstairs, they're in bed together. Her and the other female are having sex or not,
Yeah.
doing their thing in front of Jeffrey Epstein. And at some point, he had got her down on her stomach and pushed her head into the bed and then sexually penetrated her. And she yelled, no, stop, whatever she may have said. Ultimately, he did stop, but that was the last time he went over. So I'm reading this, and I was like, I knew about like the massages and I'm not saying that that's not bad, but the massaging and the touching. But when I read this, what this victim was saying to the police, I thought, how in the hell would he only get 18 months? Because later down the road, after he's arrested the second time, after he commits suicide, and Maxwell is arrested, and she's convicted, she gets 20 years.
Well, I feel like in this interview, this girl explains why. Because the grand jury, it was kind of an Alicia Owens type of situation, from what I understand from what this girl was saying. Is she was in front of a grand jury, and they were accusing her also because she would bring her friends in. So then they were ultimately going to pull the same thing the grand jury did with Alicia Owen.
Well, they labeled these children as prostitutes.
Right. And then this particular one that was talking, she said like they were going to convict me.
Well, I wonder if you're talking about the girl, the Robson that was bringing the girls over. Because I know the police did tell this Robson, because at the time they interviewed this Robson, she was in college. She was a freshman in college at the time.
There was. I watched hers too. There was a couple of them, but this one particularly was the Marina. It's just her name started with an M, but it was this Marina girl, and she specifically said because her story, she was from Brazil, and then there was another girl that she introduced to Jeffrey who was also from Brazil, and she wouldn't go over there without this girl because they were both Brazilian, and this Marina girl was kind of, I want to use the word procurer, but she was one of the main girls that would bring her friends to him. But at the same time, she was also doing all this stuff, but then blocking a lot of it out. It's interesting. Just, watch the interview on.
The other thing, does anybody remember in, I think 2008 is, I think, when he was ultimately convicted of the minor crimes that he was convicted of. Does anybody even remember that? Because I wasn't familiar with Jeffrey Epstein until he got arrested right before he committed suicide.
No, I can't even recall when the first time I heard his name.
And I think the reason for that is part of this agreement that they had. There was maybe some NDAs that were signed. And so what happened with the grand jury, what happened with the discussions when they decided that, hey, we're going to have you plead out to the prostitution, is that none of that could be disclosed afterwards. So he would go to jail. They didn't have to tell anything to the victims. They didn't have to tell anything to the victims' families. Everything was basically going to be silenced. He went and did his total of 13 months. And he gets out, and none of at least the 4 co-conspirators that were listed, Maxwell was not one of those listed, by the way, could not be prosecuted. And that was actually one of the complaints that Maxwell's attorneys used when she got busted was, well, she should have been part of that. Well, and they said, well, too bad, we're in New York. That's Florida. This is a different district.
Yeah.
But so that whole thing is probably the first of the really fishy shit that happened between,
for sure,
the prosecution and the defense. And who was the victim that ultimately committed suicide?
Allegedly.
Yes.
Committed suicide?
Yeah.
Virginia Roberts.
Yes.
Giuffre.
So she at one time even accused Alan Dershowitz, who was Jeffrey Epstein's attorney,
Well,
of also
Yeah,
sexually assaulting her.
I mean, he trafficked her, and she was the one that was with Prince Andrew, and I mean, she was trafficked around to a few of them, even some prime minister, which I feel like people assume it's the prime minister of Israel, possibly, or
Are you done?
Iran.
Who was that?
Virginia Giuffre, because in her book, because I, not reading, but audiobook, listening to her book, she talks about being trafficked to a prime minister.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I mean, Epstein trafficked her to several
Something else I
people.
learned later on, I think it might even be in the documentary, was that law enforcement was furious when they found out that there was going to be these lesser charges. And they went to the prosecuting attorney and said, basically, what the F are you doing? Like, he's done all of this stuff,
Well,
like these disgusting things.
what didn't it have to do with Acosta?
Yes.
Acosta is the one that said, sorry, we were told to let him go because he's Mossad.
Yeah, he's intelligence.
Intelligence. Okay, not Mossad. Intelligence. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
He's intelligence.
He's intelligence. I was told to back off. And so that's why he ultimately got lesser charges, right? That's the story.
I don't know. So that's where all the conspiracies come in.
What's Acosta's first name? I can see his big ears.
Oh,
I don't know, but that's, I think once they dug into when he was rearrested, which I think was 2019.
Was that the...
Alexander?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's his ugly mug.
And I think actually what kicked
Goofy
off,
mug.
so what kicked off the investigation, and I don't know if it started in 2017 or 18,
Well,
but was, I think the Miami Herald or a newspaper down in Florida started publishing all of these stories about the 2005 investigation and the 2008, the
conviction?
grand jury and the conviction and all of these details. And I think that's what kind of stirred it all back up. Mm-hmm. But
Yeah.
anyways, you can actually find the actual police reports. You can find all kinds of stuff from that investigation. And I think people should go back and read it. If you really want to know how bad Epstein was, some of what the victims talk about
that was
gross.
just him dipping his little pinky toe into the waters. I mean, you think that was bad? I mean, now those 3 million files that were...
Well, I think that the reason it
bad
probably
stuff
got
in there.
worse after that is now he's gotten away with it.
Well, sure. And now he's got bigger ties, and oh gosh, now he's even tied to Prince Andrew. I mean, and the prime minister and this person and that person. I mean, he can get away with anything. And mind you, the reason he is getting away with a lot of this stuff is because he's inviting these people to his mansion or penthouse, whatever you want to call it. And it's completely wired with audio, video for blackmail purposes.
And see, I wonder if that started after the 05.
It did not. Because in this interview from this Marina, she explains a scenario how she's got started into dabbling into drugs. And she was doing this because, ultimately she needed to make this money, but she didn't want to feel anything. Obviously, that's the reason, So she started doing drugs. So her and her friend, one day that they go up to do their deed with Epstein, they take a bump of coke. And Epstein comes into the room and gets in their face, and he's like, "Are you guys doing drugs?" And he's like, knew everything. She's like, "How in the hell did he know we were doing drugs?" Well, she's like, "Well, obviously he knew because he had cameras everywhere. He was watching everything. So he was watching everything previously before that. He knew that they had done coke."
You want to hear something else wild about that investigation? He knew the investigation was going on, but continued doing the same activities.
Untouchable.
While he knew the investigation, he knew he was being watched by law enforcement. As a matter of fact, Sarah Kellen had actually talked to one of the girls, and I don't know if she wanted her to keep her mouth shut or what, but while the girl was giving an interview to police, her phone received a message.
I think
hey, basically warn her, hey, just so you know, law enforcement's investigating.
Yeah.
But it never stopped him.
This girl, this Marina says that, she called when the FBI came knocking on her door, she was freaked out and she basically closed the door on the FBI agent and was like, shut the door on her. And the agent said, "You will talk to us, but I will give you the option of doing it on your time," and dropped her business card in the door. And she says that she immediately called Epstein and she's like, "I got FBI knocking on my door." And he says, don't call me, don't message me, don't talk to me. Hang up the phone and a lawyer will be in contact with you. So that's what she did. And it was Epstein's lawyer then that was helping her out. And she said at first she was answering questions from the FBI. Like she was kind of open and answering questions. Well, then that's when she started getting this suspicion that they were going to try to turn things around. And, you know, because in her mind, she's a victim. You know, she's had all this horrible stuff happen to her. She's a victim. This old man is using her for sexual favors, yada, yada. And then she got the suspicion that they were going to try to accuse her and bring her into this. And she said, that's when I shut up. So I quit talking. And whether it was, and it was also tied to Epstein it was through his lawyer, and they told her to shut up and quit talking. And I wonder if it's the same one. But
before I forget, you want to try and do something for me, Marissa? On my computer, you're going to have to go onto open the internet browser, and then go up and open my favorites. And I think you'll see one of them in the favorites is, I think it's Epstein case file, maybe. And just open that in the browser. And you might have to scroll to the top. I don't know. You don't have to share anything on this screen, but what's that website? Does it say what it's called?
Crimetimelines.com.
Yes. Crimetimelines.com. And so, and they've got all sorts of different investigations and crimes. And the Epstein one is on there, and it's pretty interesting because, I mean, it'll give you a timeline, of course, but they also link all of the reference material. And it's not just news articles. So they will link actual copies of all of the police reports. There's stuff that has to do with the grand jury, and it's everything over Epstein and Maxwell. It's any court document that they could get their hands on, and there is a bunch of them there. And so I would encourage anybody that's interested in the Epstein thing at all just to kind of go through that website.
Yeah.
And check it out. There's a ton of information. It's easy to use. They do a good job of basically making it user-friendly. It's not like the 3.5 million files that the government dropped. But
yeah,
I mean, I use it a lot for a resource because they make it nice and neat and easy.
Yeah, law enforcement type brain, you know.
Oh, I don't have a brain.
Well, I mean, that type of thing would be good for people like you. Not saying anything about that, but
people like me.
But people like me who want the. I'm into the stories of the victims and like that type of thing. I think that's the woman part, and you're into the guy analytical part.
Well,
the logistic part.
I like the conspiracy stuff, but the other thing I like to do, which is fun for me, maybe it's not fun for some people, but read the conspiracy. But then when you can find actual evidence or things that you know to be fact, and you can kind of make that connection. So basically,
but I mean, like you're into the document part of it, where I'm into the story part of it. You know, I want to hear from the victims, like what their story is.
Well, and I want to hear that too. But you're right.
But
I do like to see police reports,
right? Because
sometimes you see details in there that aren't shared.
But it's just interesting how on your document and my story that I watched, I feel like they're probably the same person. I don't know.
It could be.
But it's just the way the stories are kind of, that sounds pretty darn similar. Anyway.
Where are we at for time, Marissa?
56 minutes.
56 minutes. Should we just wrap this one up?
Well, and I encourage people too, if they're, want to hear that side of it. Just like I'm listening to the Virginia Giuffre's book. I can't remember what it's called. Something Girl. But also some of the other stories of the victims, which I found on softwhiteunderbelly.com. he does a good job of interviewing, and it pretty much just lets them tell their stories. Now, I will warn you that they're graphic. Like for YouTube, he had to censor a lot of it out and had to cut a lot of the parts out. Whereas on this website, it's uncut and it's graphic. Like they don't hold back.
Her book is Nobody's Girl.
Nobody's Girl. Yeah. And I'm sorry to say that I did not finish it yet, but I will when I get some more windshield time.
What should we go into on the next one?
I would really like to talk about, more of the trafficking and kind of like I want to bring back the Interlochen camp because he happened to in Interlochen, Michigan.
The summer camp that he went to.
The summer camp that he went to.
Oh, I didn't.
We discussed at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, at 14 he went to Interlochen summer camp for.
Okay, I was lost there for a
yeah,
second. It doesn't take much for me.
Because I find it interesting because in I can't remember what year it was. He actually purchased a cabin in that same camp, and there's a lot of ties of trafficking kids in that Interlochen camp in a boarding school. And so I kind of want to circle back around to that because I feel like that's interesting how he goes there at 14 and that kind of gives him a peek into that world and the secludedness of it. And then later on goes back and purchases a cabin there. And there's a lot of stories and ties to trafficking there. I also want to talk about Zorro Ranch, what was found there. Yeah, what was going on there in New Mexico.
They recently did a search there.
Yeah. Also the people who now own it. Interesting. There's a lot of stuff that, people don't know about. I mean, we all know about Little St. James Island. We all know about Epstein Island.
We all know about the airplane and the logs and
I mean that's
this person flew, whether it be Clinton or
that's old news.
Trump or whoever the case may be.
What's interesting is these other two that people may not be as familiar with. That it's now coming out that there's a lot more going on.
All right, well,
so
we'll do it next time.
Yeah.
All right.
See you later.
See ya.
Bye.